Let's be honest, the moment a woman starts telling you her problems, you think you've been chosen. You think she trusts you, that you're the one she feels safe with, maybe even the one she's slowly falling for. But what if I told you that in that exact moment, she's not opening her heart the way you think she is? She's observing you, measuring you, testing you in ways you don't even realize. And most men fail this test without ever knowing it happened, because you've been taught the wrong instinct. You've been conditioned to fix, to solve, to jump in like a hero the second she sounds overwhelmed. She says she's stressed, you offer solutions. She says someone hurt her, you try to defend her. She says life feels heavy, you rush to lighten it. And in your mind, you're doing everything right. But in her mind, you've already revealed something. You've shown her that you don't understand the game she's playing on a psychological level. You've shown her that your emotional control is reactive, not grounded. And most importantly, you've shown her that you're trying to earn her approval instead of naturally holding it. When a woman shares her problems with you, she's not just venting, she's not just talking, she's watching how you respond under subtle pressure. She's studying your energy, your patience, your ability to stay centered without trying to impress her. Because here's the truth most men can't handle. She already knows the solutions to most of her problems. She's not coming to you because she's clueless. She's coming to you because she wants to feel something. And the way you respond determines whether she feels respect or quiet disappointment. See, attraction doesn't grow from you being useful. It grows from you being emotionally composed. When you rush to fix everything, it signals something deeper. That you're uncomfortable with her discomfort. That you need to resolve things quickly so you can feel in control again. And control is exactly what she's testing. She wants to see if you can sit in the chaos without losing yourself, if you can hear her emotions without becoming them, if you can stay grounded while she's expressing confusion, frustration, or even vulnerability. Because a man who remains steady in emotional storms feels rare, powerful, safe in a way that doesn't beg for validation. But a man who scrambles to fix everything feels predictable, easy to read, easy to replace. And I know that stings, but you need to hear it. Because if you keep responding the same way, you'll keep getting the same outcome. She'll talk to you, she'll share things, maybe even rely on you emotionally. But something will always feel slightly off, like you're close, but never quite there, like she appreciates you, but doesn't crave you. That's the difference between being her emotional support and being the man she genuinely desires. So the next time she starts opening up, don't rush, don't interrupt her emotional process with your need to solve. Just listen, but not the way you think listening works. Because what you're about to learn next will completely change the way she sees you. You think listening means being quiet, nodding, and waiting for your turn to speak. That's what most men do. They sit there absorbing her words, pretending to understand, and then the moment there's a pause, they jump in with advice, reassurance, or logic. And that's exactly where they lose her. Because real listening, the kind she's unconsciously testing for, has nothing to do with silence. It has everything to do with presence. When she shares her problems, she's not just watching what you say. She's watching what you feel. Your micro reactions, the way your energy shifts, whether you become tense, overly serious, or subtly anxious to get it right. She can feel it. Women are highly attuned to emotional energy, not because they overthink, but because they've spent their entire lives reading between the lines. So when you sit there trying to be perfect, trying to say the right thing, trying to impress her with your understanding, it creates a disconnect. You're no longer present, you're performing. And the moment you start performing, she stops feeling you. That's why some men can say very little and still leave a strong impression. Because their energy stays calm, grounded, almost unaffected by the emotional storm she's expressing. Not cold, not distant, just centered. That centered energy tells her something powerful. This man isn't shaken easily. And that matters more than anything you could ever say. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Sometimes when she shares her problems, she'll exaggerate. Not consciously, not maliciously, but emotionally. She'll lean into the feeling, stretch the frustration, amplify the confusion. Why? Because she wants to see if you'll get pulled into it with her. If you start matching her intensity too quickly, getting frustrated on her behalf, reactive strongly, or emotionally investing too fast, you've just shown her that you're easy to influence and that weakens attraction instantly. But if you stay composed, if you acknowledge her feelings without drowning in them, if you respond with clarity instead of emotional chaos, something shifts. She feels seen without feeling like she has to manage you too. That's the hidden layer most men miss. When you overreact, even with good intentions, you become another emotional weight she has to carry. Now, instead of just dealing with her problem, she's also dealing with your reaction to her problem, and that's exhausting. So what does she actually want in that moment? She wants emotional leadership, not control, not dominance, but a quiet, steady presence that doesn't crumble under pressure. A man who can hear her, understand her, and still remain rooted in himself. That's what creates tension. That's what builds attraction. Because deep down, she's asking herself one question while she talks to you. If life gets hard, will this man make it heavier, or will he make it lighter without losing himself? Most men answer that question wrong without realizing it. They think being more involved, more reactive, more expressive will win her over. But what actually wins her over is restraint, awareness, control over your own emotional state. And once you master that, you stop being just another guy she talks to. You become the man she feels something deeper around, even if she can't fully explain why. There's another layer to this that most men never even consider. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Sometimes when she shares her problems with you, she already knows exactly what she's going to do. Let that sink in. She's not confused. She's not lost. She's already leaning toward a decision. But instead of telling you directly, she presents the situation as a problem and then watches how you respond. Why? Because she's testing your alignment. She wants to see if you'll blindly agree with her or if you have the confidence to hold your own perspective without fear of losing her approval. And this is where a lot of men completely collapse. She says, "I don't know what to do. He treated me badly." And instantly you jump in with, "Yeah, he's wrong. You deserve better. You should leave him." Sounds supportive, right? But to her, it feels predictable. It feels like you're saying what you think she wants to hear, not what you genuinely believe. And even if you do believe it, the way you rush to agree makes it feel like you're trying to position yourself as the better option. And that kills tension, because attraction doesn't grow from you trying to replace another man. It grows from you being so grounded in your own thinking that you don't need to compete at all. Now imagine a different response. She tells you the same story, expecting the same reaction, but instead you pause, you listen fully, and then you say something calm, something honest, something that isn't trying to win her over, something like, "It sounds like you already know what you're going to do. You're just not fully comfortable with it yet." Do you feel the difference? You're not fixing, you're not agreeing blindly, you're not chasing approval, you're holding a mirror up to her, and that is powerful. Because now she feels understood on a deeper level, not just heard, but seen. And being seen creates a connection that goes beyond surface-level attraction. But here's the risk, and this is why most men avoid it. When you stop agreeing with everything she says, when you stop trying to please her, when you start holding your own frame, there will be moments of tension. She might push back, she might question you, she might even go quiet for a second. That's not rejection, that's the test intensifying. She's checking if your confidence is real or if it disappears the moment there's resistance. And if you stay calm, if you don't fold, if you don't rush to soften your stance just to keep things comfortable, something changes in her perception of you. You stop being safe in a boring way and start becoming safe in a strong way. There's a difference. A man who agrees with everything feels safe because he's predictable. A man who stands firm in his perspective feels safe because he's stable. And stability is what creates trust. So when she shares her problems, don't just focus on what she's saying. Pay attention to what she's inviting you to reveal about yourself, your mindset, your emotional control, your ability to stand in your truth without needing her validation. Because in that moment, she's not just talking about her life. She's quietly asking, who are you really when it matters? Now here's where it gets even deeper. Because sometimes when she shares her problems with you, she's not just testing your emotional control or your perspective. She's testing your boundaries. And this is where things quietly fall apart for a lot of men who think they're doing everything right. You start off strong, you listen well, you stay calm, you don't overreact, but then she keeps coming back again and again. More problems, more emotional weight, more late-night conversations where you're the one holding everything together. And without realizing it, you slowly shift roles. You stop being the man she's intrigued by and start becoming the man she leans on. Now, don't misunderstand this. Being supportive is not the problem. The problem is when your entire dynamic becomes built around her emotional needs while yours quietly disappear. Because the moment she senses that you're always available, always ready, always willing to absorb whatever she brings without limit, something changes in how she values you. Not consciously, not intentionally, but psychologically. Scarcity creates value. And when there's no limit to your time, your attention, your emotional energy, it starts to feel less special, less earned, less attractive. This is the part no one tells you. You can be the most understanding, patient, emotionally intelligent man in the room and still lose her interest if you don't protect your boundaries. Because boundaries signal self-respect. And self-respect is one of the strongest triggers of attraction. So when she shares her problems constantly, when she starts relying on you as her emotional outlet, you have to ask yourself something uncomfortable. Am I choosing this or am I afraid to say no? Because if your support is coming from fear, fear of losing her, fear of disappointing her, fear of not being good enough, then she will feel that. Maybe not in words, but in energy. And that energy feels weak. Not because you care, but because your care doesn't come from strength. It comes from need. A man who chooses to be there feels grounded. A man who feels obligated to be there feels drained. And she can tell the difference. This is why sometimes the most powerful thing you can do when she brings you her problems is to not always be available. Not in a cold way, not in a dismissive way, but in a way that shows your life has structure, priorities, and limits. You might say, I hear you, but I can't dive into this right now. Let's talk later. Simple, calm, unapologetic. And watch what happens. Instead of pushing her away, it often pulls her closer. Because now she sees that your world doesn't revolve around her emotions. You're not abandoning her. You're balancing yourself. And that balance is rare. Most men swing to extremes. They either become distant and unavailable or overly present and emotionally consumed. But the man who knows when to step in and when to step back creates a rhythm that keeps her engaged because she never fully figures you out. And mystery, when combined with emotional stability, becomes incredibly attractive. So understand this clearly. When she shares her problems, she's not just looking for comfort. She's not just testing your patience. She's also watching how much of yourself you're willing to give away and whether you have the strength to hold something back. Because the man who gives everything too easily often ends up being taken for granted. But the man who knows his limits becomes someone she doesn't want to lose. There's one final shift happening beneath all of this. And if you don't recognize it, you'll keep repeating the same cycle no matter how much you improve. When a woman shares her problems with you consistently, over time she starts placing you into a category, not with words, not consciously, but through repeated emotional patterns. You either become the man she feels drawn to or the man she feels comfortable unloading on. And those two roles rarely overlap. This is where a lot of men get trapped. Because on the surface, everything looks like progress. She opens up more. She trusts you. She tells you things she doesn't tell others. You feel closer, more connected. But attraction isn't growing. It's stabilizing into something safe, predictable, and emotionally convenient for her. You become the man she goes to when she needs clarity, support, or someone to listen. But not the man she thinks about when she feels desire, curiosity, or excitement. And the painful part is you don't notice the shift until it's already happened. Because you mistake emotional access for romantic progress. You think, she tells me everything, that must mean something. It does mean something, just not what you think. It means she's comfortable with you. But comfort without tension fades into familiarity. And familiarity without attraction leads to you being seen as optional. This is why some men watch a woman slowly drift away even though they did everything right. They were there, they listened, they supported, they showed consistency, but they never created emotional contrast. They never gave her a reason to feel something different when she's around them. Because here's the truth most people avoid. Attraction isn't built in comfort zones. It's built in subtle emotional shifts. Moments where she doesn't fully know what you're thinking. Moments where your response isn't predictable. Moments where your presence challenges her just enough to keep her engaged. If every time she brings you a problem, she gets the same version of you, calm, agreeable, always available, always understanding, then eventually she stops noticing you. You become part of the background of her emotional life, reliable but replaceable. So what changes that? Depth, not louder reactions, not stronger opinions, but a deeper way of engaging. Instead of always responding on the surface level of her problem, you start touching the layer underneath. She says she's stressed about work. You don't just say, "It'll be okay." You say something like, "You don't sound stressed, you sound tired of pretending it matters as much as it used to." Now you've shifted the conversation. Now she feels something unexpected. Now she's not just talking, she's thinking, feeling, questioning. And in that moment, you stand out. Because you didn't just hear her words. You understood her state. That's what separates the man she vents to from the man she becomes emotionally invested in. One listens, the other connects. And connection, when it's real, creates a pull that comfort alone never can. So, if you've been stuck in that space where she talks to you, trusts you, but something feels missing, this is why. You've been giving her everything she needs to feel safe, but nothing that makes her feel drawn. And without that pull, she'll never fully choose you, no matter how much she shares with you. So, now you understand something most men never piece together. When she shares her problems, it was never just about the problem, it was about you, your reactions, your boundaries, your emotional control, your ability to stay grounded while still being human, your capacity to listen without losing yourself in what she feels. Because in those moments, she's not just speaking to you, she's experiencing you. And every response you give is silently shaping how she categorizes you in her mind. Not as a good man or a bad man, but as a man she feels something toward or a man she simply relies on. And that difference changes everything. Now here's where things get real. If you always show up the same way, always available, always understanding, always steady in a predictable way, you might think you're building trust. But trust alone doesn't create attraction. It creates dependency at best and emotional distance at worst. Because without contrast, there's no tension. Without tension, there's no curiosity. Without curiosity, there's no pull. And without pull, she slowly stops feeling that emotional spark that made her come to you in the first place. So, what do you do with this? You don't become colder, you don't become distant. You don't start playing games or manipulating emotions. That's not strength. That's insecurity disguised as control. Real strength is simpler. It's being fully present without being consumed. It's listening without absorbing every emotional wave. It's caring without abandoning yourself in the process. And it's knowing that your value doesn't increase because she has problems. And it doesn't decrease because you don't fix them. When a woman shares her problems with you, the real test is never about her. It's about whether you can remain the same man regardless of what she brings into your space. Because if your mood, your energy, your identity shifts every time she shifts emotionally, she will feel it. And over time, she won't see you as stable anymore. She'll see you as reactive. But when you stay centered, when you don't rush to impress, fix, or prove anything, something subtle happens. She relaxes deeper around you. Not because you solved anything, but because she feels something rare. Emotional stability without pressure. And that is what creates real attraction in the long run. Not perfection, not constant advice, not endless availability, but a man who is steady enough that she doesn't have to manage his emotions while managing her own. Now listen carefully. If you take anything from this, take this one truth with you. The way she shares her problems with you is never just a conversation. It's a mirror reflecting who you are under emotional pressure. And most men don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they react instead of remain. So, here's a question for you. When she brings you her problems, do you become the man who loses himself trying to help, or the man who stays grounded enough that she feels even more drawn in without knowing why? Write your answer in the comments. And if this hit closer than you expected, like the video, subscribe and share it with a friend who still thinks fixing everything is what makes a man attractive.